The heavy doors of the tribunal chamber opened with a soft hiss. Commander Zexithara walked slowly into the room, her forearms hanging at her sides. Each step echoed in the silent hall. The alien commander looked tired, older than her species usually appeared. Her blue skin had lost its shine, and her large black eyes seemed to hold too many memories. 12 representatives from different worlds sat behind a curved desk. They watched her carefully as she moved to the witness chair. These beings had seen many war crimes tribunals before. They expected the usual stories of battle, conquest, and defeat. They thought they knew what war looked like. Zexithara sat down slowly. The chair adjusted to fit her tall, thin body. She placed all 4 hands on the table in front of her. For a long moment, she said nothing. The room waited. "State your name and rank for the record," said the lead judge, a gray-skinned Vortan with deep purple eyes. "Commander Zexithara of the Kethamori 4th Fleet," she replied. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "You served in the conflict with the humans 3 years ago?" "Yes." "You commanded forces during the invasion of human space?" "I did." The judge looked down at his notes. "This tribunal has been called to investigate possible war crimes committed by human forces during that conflict. You have agreed to testify about what you witnessed." Zexithara nodded slowly. Her compound eyes reflected the soft lights of the chamber. "You want to know about the humans?" she said, her voice growing even quieter. "You think you understand? What happened out there?" She paused and looked around the room. Each representative leaned forward slightly. They were used to aliens being afraid to speak, being ashamed of their defeats. But something in Zexithara's manner was different. She was not ashamed, she was frightened. "You have seen conquest," she continued. "You have seen occupation. You have seen species fight for territory, for resources, for survival. But humans..." She stopped and shook her head slowly. "Humans do not just fight wars. They become war itself." A murmur ran through the chamber. The representatives looked at each other with confusion. This was not how these testimonies usually began. The Vortan judge frowned. "Commander, please stick to the facts. Tell us what you observed during the conflict." Zexithara's laugh was bitter and short. "Facts? You want facts?" She straightened in her chair. "Here is a fact. My species has conquered 47 worlds. We have absorbed 32 different civilizations into our empire. We know how war works. We know how species behave when they face superior force." She gestured with 2 of her arms. "Some species surrender immediately. They see our ships, count our weapons, and decide that living under our rule is better than dying for nothing. These are the smart ones. Their worlds become part of our empire. Their people work for us, and eventually their children grow up as Kethamori citizens. Other species fight," she continued. "They defend their worlds, protect their families, try to push us back. These fights are harder, but they follow patterns. They set up defensive positions, try to protect their important cities, negotiate for their civilians. Even when they lose, they fight with honor. We respect them for this." The judge nodded. This sounded normal. This was how civilized species conducted war. "But humans," Zexithara said, and her voice dropped to almost nothing. "Humans did something we had never seen before. Something that is not in any of our military books, not in any of our war studies. When we demanded their surrender, they sent us a message. Just 4 words." She paused, and the room held its breath. "Come and take it." The silence stretched on. Finally, another judge, a tall being with silver skin, spoke up. "That does not seem unusual. Many species reject surrender demands." Zexithara shook her head. "You do not understand. It was not just the words. It was what came after. Most species who refuse surrender start preparing defenses. They move their civilians to safe places, strengthen their military bases, call for help from allies. Humans did none of these things." "What did they do?" asked the Vortan judge. "They thanked us." Confused looks passed between the tribunal members. "There, Admiral Jake Morrison sent us another message an hour later. He thanked us for giving them advance warning. He said it was very helpful to know exactly when the war would start. Then he cut all communications. Zexithara closed her large eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, they seemed to be looking at something far away. Within 6 hours, every human civilian on their outer colonies had disappeared. Not evacuated. Disappeared. Their cities were empty, their space stations abandoned, their mining operations shut down. It was like they had never been there at all. "Where did they go?" asked a small green-skinned judge. "We never found out. Not during the entire war. It was like they had vanished into space itself. But that was not the strangest part." Zexithara used one hand to point to her temple. The strangest part was what they left behind. Every human world we approached had been turned into a trap. Not just military traps, everything was a trap. Their power stations were rigged to explode. Their water supplies were poisoned. Their roads were blocked. Their computers were programmed to attack our systems. They destroyed their own infrastructure? The Silver Judge sounded shocked. "Everything," Zexithara confirmed. "They burned their own farms, collapsed their own mines, sabotaged their own factories. In 47 conquests, we had never seen anything like it. Species fight to protect their worlds, not destroy them." She leaned forward, her forearms spread on the table. "Do you understand what this meant? They were not fighting to win. They were not fighting to protect what they had. They were fighting to make sure we could never have it either." The judges exchanged worried glances. This was not the story they had expected to hear. But that was just the beginning. Zexithara continued. "The real horror started when we realized what Admiral Morrison had been doing during those 6 hours. While we were preparing our invasion fleets, while we were planning our attack routes, while we were getting ready for a normal conquest, he was studying us." "Studying you how?" asked the Vortan judge. "Our ships, our weapons, our tactics, our weaknesses." In 6 hours, that human learned more about Kethmori military science than most of our enemies learn in years of fighting, and he used that knowledge to plan something that still gives me nightmares. Zexithara's voice grew even quieter. The tribunal had to strain to hear her words. "He planned to turn our own strength against us, our size, our numbers, our traditional tactics. He was going to use everything we thought were advantages and make them into weaknesses. And the most terrifying part was that he was going to do it while making us think we were winning." The room was completely silent now. Even the soft hum of the air recycling system seemed loud. "You want to know about human war crimes?" Zexithara said, looking directly at each judge in turn. "You want to understand what they did to us out there. But first you need to understand this. Humans do not fight the way other species fight. They do not follow the rules that make war civilized. They fight to end wars, not to win them. And they will do anything, sacrifice anything, become anything to make that happen." She sat back in her chair, all 4 arms trembling slightly. "That is what I learned during 3 years of fighting them. That is what I am here to tell you. And that is why, when this tribunal is over, you should all go home and pray that humans never decide your species needs to be stopped." The silence in the chamber was complete. Outside, the stars shone peacefully, but inside, 12 representatives of galactic civilization tried to understand what they had just heard. The real testimony was just beginning. The Vortan judge leaned forward in his chair. "Commander, please tell us about your first encounter with human forces. What happened when your fleets entered their space?" Zexithara stared at the table for a moment. Her 4 hands moved nervously against the smooth surface. "You need to understand how confident we were. The humans had only one star system, Earth and a few small colonies around other planets. Their ships used basic fusion drives. Their weapons were simple projectile cannons and nuclear missiles." She lifted one hand and gestured weakly. "Our scouts had been watching them for months before the invasion. They seemed so primitive compared to us. We had energy shields, plasma weapons, faster-than-light communication across our entire fleet. Our smallest warship was bigger than their largest battleship." "What was your assessment of their military capability?" asked the Silver Judge. "Minimal," Zexithara replied without hesitation. "Our war computers calculated that we could conquer their entire system in less than 1 standard week. The humans had perhaps 200 ships total. We brought 3,000 ships in the first wave alone." She paused and shook her head slowly. Those calculations were correct, by the way. We could have conquered them in a week, if they had fought like every other species in the galaxy. But they didn't? Prompted another judge. No, they fought like humans. Zexathera closed her eyes again. When she spoke, her voice took on a different quality, as if she were seeing the events all over again. The first battle took place near their outermost colony, a mining world called Frontier Base. It was a small planet with maybe 50,000 humans living there. Our standard procedure was to surround the world, demand surrender, and if they refused, we would demonstrate our power by destroying one of their cities. A common tactic, the Vortan judge noted. Yes, it works on every species we have ever encountered. Show them they cannot win, give them a chance to surrender with dignity, and most choose to live rather than die for nothing. Zexathera opened her eyes and looked directly at the judges. But when we surrounded Frontier Base, something strange happened. The humans did not try to contact us. They did not ask for terms. They did not even power up their defensive weapons. They surrendered immediately? No. They ignored us completely. Confused murmurs rippled through the chamber. This was not normal behavior for any species. For 12 hours we sat in orbit around their world, waiting for some kind of response. Our communications officers tried every frequency, every protocol. Nothing. It was like the humans on that world had decided we did not exist. What did you do? Admiral Morrison finally contacted us from their main fleet, which was still 3 days away from the battle zone. He apologized for the delay and said the colonists had been given new orders. Then he told us something that made no sense at the time. Zexathera paused, her breathing becoming slightly faster. He said the people on Frontier Base were no longer civilians. As of that morning, every human on the planet had been inducted into their military as emergency volunteers. Men, women, elderly people, even children old enough to hold tools, all of them were now soldiers. That's impossible, said the Green Judge. You cannot turn an entire civilian population into an army overnight. That is exactly what I told my staff, Zexathera agreed. But Admiral Morrison was not finished. He explained that since they were all soldiers now, they would not surrender. Instead, they were going to fight until every single one of them was dead. The judges looked at each other with growing concern. But here is the part that should have warned us about what kind of war this would be, Zexathera continued. Morrison told us that the colonists had voted on how they wanted to die. They had 3 choices. They could try to evacuate and probably be captured. They could surrender and become prisoners. Or they could turn their entire world into a weapon and take as many of our ships with them as possible. What did they choose? Asked the Vortan judge, though his expression suggested he already knew the answer. They voted unanimously for the third option. Silence fell over the chamber again. Over the next 6 hours, we watched 50,000 humans systematically destroy everything on their world that might be useful to us. But they did not just destroy it. They turned it into traps, into weapons, into bombs. The mining equipment became missiles aimed at our ships. The power plants became nuclear weapons set to explode when we landed. The water processing facilities became chemical weapon factories. Zexathera's voice grew quieter. And they did all of this while singing. Singing human battle songs, transmitted on every frequency so we could hear them. For 6 hours while they prepared to die, they sang songs about their home world, about their families, about fighting against impossible odds. The words were translated for us. They were not asking for help or mercy. They were promising that they would make us pay for every life we took. She used 2 hands to rub her temples, a gesture that looked oddly human. When we finally landed troops on Frontier Base, we found empty buildings filled with explosives. Every street was mined. Every vehicle was booby-trapped. The humans had retreated to underground tunnels and were fighting us from below, using their own mining equipment as weapons. How long did the battle last? Asked the Silver Judge. 18 days. The judges exchanged shocked looks. Most planetary invasions lasted a few hours at most. 18 days to conquer 50,000 primitive humans with mining tools and improvised weapons, Zexathera continued. They cost us 47 ships and over 8,000 soldiers. When we finally killed the last human defender, we controlled a dead world full of holes and wreckage that was completely useless to us. But you had won, pointed out the green judge. Zexthera laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. Won? That battle was the beginning of our defeat, and we were too stupid to realize it. While we spent 18 days fighting for a worthless rock, Admiral Morrison was studying our tactics, our weapons, our formations. He learned how we fought by watching us fight. Surely you adapted your strategies after that battle. Of course we did. We changed our approach completely. No more surrounding planets and demanding surrender. No more giving them time to prepare. We decided to use overwhelming force from the beginning. Zexathera's compound eyes seemed to focus on something far away. The second battle was at a human research station called Deep Lab 7. It was much smaller than Frontier Base, maybe 5,000 scientists and their families. We brought twice as many ships as we had used before. We surrounded the station and immediately began bombardment. That sounds more effective. It should have been. But humans do not think like other species. While we were setting up our attack formation, they did something that had never happened in our 47 conquests. What? They attacked us first. The tribunal chamber fell completely silent. Dr. Kate Miller was the station commander. She had exactly 12 small research vessels and maybe 200 people with any military training at all. She watched our fleet surround her station, and instead of preparing defenses or trying to evacuate, she loaded every ship with explosives and aimed them directly at our largest warships. Zexathera's hands began to shake slightly. She did not try to disable our ships or force us to retreat. She was trying to destroy as many of us as possible, even though it meant certain death for everyone on her station. Suicide attacks, said the Vortan judge grimly. No, not suicide attacks. Calculated sacrifice. Dr. Miller sent us a message before she launched her attack. She said her people had done the math. If they could destroy enough of our ships, it would delay our advance toward Earth by several weeks. Those weeks would give other human colonies time to prepare similar defenses. The silence stretched on for long moments. She was right. Zexathera finally continued. Her 12 small ships, loaded with improvised explosives, destroyed 6 of our heavy cruisers and damaged dozens more. It took us 3 weeks to repair and regroup before we could continue the invasion. And during those 3 weeks, every remaining human colony used the time exactly as Dr. Miller had predicted. They turned themselves into weapons. By the time we reached the next human world, we found it completely empty except for automated defense systems and enough booby traps to keep us busy for another month. Zexathera looked around the chamber, meeting each judge's eyes in turn. That was when we realized we were not fighting a normal war. We were fighting an entire species that had decided death was preferable to defeat. And they were very, very good at making their deaths as expensive as possible for us. The weight of her words settled over the tribunal like a dark cloud. Outside the chamber, the stars continued their ancient dance. But inside, 12 representatives of galactic civilization began to understand that they were hearing about something completely unprecedented in the history of interstellar warfare. The human war machine was just getting started. The green judge shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Commander, you mentioned that your tactics changed after these early encounters. How did your forces adapt to human fighting methods? Zexathera's laugh was bitter and cold. Adapt? We tried. Everything. New formations, different weapons, faster attacks, slower sieges. Nothing worked because we were still thinking like civilized beings. We kept expecting humans to eventually start fighting properly. She held up one of her 4 hands, fingers spread. The third major battle taught us that humans do not care about fighting properly. They only care about winning. Tell us about this battle, said the Vortan judge. It happened near a human colony called New Boston. By this time, we had learned to expect empty worlds and traps. But New Boston was different. Our scouts detected over 2 million humans still living there. They had not evacuated. Zexathera paused, her compound eyes reflecting the chamber lights. We thought finally we had found humans who would act normally. Surely they would not sacrifice 2 million people for a useless gesture. But they would? No. They had something much worse planned. The alien commander's voice grew quieter. The human fleet defending New Boston was commanded by Captain Lisa Chen. She had 40 ships against our 300. Standard military doctrine said she should either retreat to fight another day or establish defensive positions around the planet. What did she do instead? She requested a meeting. Surprised murmurs went around the chamber. This sounded like normal diplomatic protocol. Captain Chen sent us a message asking for peace talks. She said the people of New Boston wanted to discuss surrender terms. She proposed that we meet in neutral space halfway between our fleets, with both sides bringing only 3 ships each. The Silver Judge nodded approvingly. A reasonable request. That is exactly what we thought. Finally, humans were acting like rational beings. My admiral agreed immediately. We prepared our finest diplomatic vessel and selected our best negotiators. Zexathara's hands began to shake again. The meeting was set for noon, Standard Galactic Time. At exactly 11:55, both fleets moved to the agreed positions. Captain Chen's ship approached with 2 escorts, just as planned. Our diplomatic vessel moved forward to meet them. This sounds like normal procedure. It was. Until 11:59. The chamber fell silent. At 11:59, 1 minute before the official meeting time, Captain Chen's 2 escort ships exploded. Gasps echoed around the room. Not from our weapons, they destroyed themselves. And as they exploded, dozens of smaller human ships emerged from behind the debris, moving at maximum speed directly toward our main fleet. Zexathara closed her eyes tightly. Captain Chen had hidden her real attack force behind her own ships. While we were focused on the peace talks, while our guards were down, while our weapons were powered down in respect for the diplomatic meeting, she launched a full assault. "That is treachery!" exclaimed the Green Judge. "No," Zexathara said firmly. "That is human military strategy." Chen never agreed to any rules about when she could or could not attack. She never signed any treaties about diplomatic immunity. We assumed she would follow our customs, but she never promised to do that. The Vortan judge frowned. But surely attacking during peace negotiations violates basic civilized conduct. Captain Chen sent us a message as her ships opened fire. She said that civilized conduct was a luxury her species could not afford. Then she said something I will never forget. What? She said that if we wanted a civilized war, we should have picked a fight with a civilized species. The judges exchanged troubled looks. The attack lasted only 12 minutes, but Chen's ships destroyed over 60 of our vessels before we could respond, including our diplomatic ship and our top negotiators. Zexathara opened her eyes and looked directly at the tribunal. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was what happened next. Continue. While we were trying to reorganize our fleet and respond to the attack, Captain Chen did something that still gives me nightmares. She contacted the 2 million civilians on New Boston and told them to begin immediate evacuation. During the battle? During the battle. While her ships were fighting ours, while explosions were lighting up space all around the planet, while our forces were in complete chaos, those 2 million humans calmly walked onto transport ships and disappeared. The Silver Judge leaned forward. Where did they go? We never found out. But within 6 hours, New Boston was as empty as every other human world we had encountered. Except this time, we had lost a quarter of our fleet in the process. Zexathara used one hand to rub her forehead. That night, I sat in my quarters trying to understand what had happened. Captain Chen had used our own diplomatic protocols against us. She had turned our civilized behavior into a weapon. How so? Simple. She knew we would lower our defenses during peace talks because that is what honorable species do. She knew we would position our ships in neat, organized formations because that shows respect during diplomatic meetings. She knew we would power down our weapons because firing during negotiations would be unthinkable. The alien commander's voice grew harder, and she used every single one of those civilized behaviors to kill as many of us as possible. What did your forces do then? We stopped being civilized. The words hung in the air like a threat. Our next engagement was different. No more diplomatic meetings, no more organized formations, no more following any rules at all. We decided to fight humans using human methods. Zexathera's compound eyes seemed to glow slightly. The battle happened at a human outpost called Forward Station Charlie. Only 5,000 humans, mostly military, personnel. We surrounded the station with 200 ships and began immediate bombardment. No warning? No warning. No surrender demands. No negotiations. We opened fire the moment we arrived. And? The humans were ready for us. The judges looked confused. Somehow they knew we were coming. Somehow they knew exactly when we would arrive and exactly how we would attack. Forward Station. Charlie looked like a normal military base, but it was actually an enormous trap. Zexathera shuddered visibly. The moment we began firing, the entire station exploded. Not from our weapons. From charges they had placed themselves, but this was not a suicide attack like the others. What was it then? Bait. The single word seemed to echo in the chamber. The explosion was designed to look like we had destroyed the station with overwhelming firepower. Our sensors showed no life signs, no power signatures, nothing. We thought we had finally achieved a quick, clean victory. But you hadn't. The explosion had been carefully calculated. It destroyed the upper levels of the station, but left the underground sections intact. While we were celebrating our apparent victory, Sergeant Danny Rodriguez was leading 300 human soldiers through tunnels beneath our feet. The Vortan judge frowned. Beneath your feet? The station was built on an asteroid. Rodriguez and his people used mining equipment to tunnel through the rock and attach boarding pods directly to the hulls of our ships. While we were in orbit, thinking we were safe, they were cutting through our armor plating. Impossible. Our sensors would have detected them. Human boarding pods are not made of metal. They are made of ice and rock and organic materials. 2. Our sensors, they look like space debris. Zexathera's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. At 0300 hours, Rodriguez and his soldiers were inside 47 of our ships simultaneously. What did they do? They did not try to capture the ships. They did not try to take prisoners. They did not try to steal our technology or information. She paused, her breathing becoming irregular. They systematically destroyed the life support systems on every ship they had boarded. But they did it slowly, section by section, while broadcasting human music at maximum volume through our communication systems. Music, war songs, battle hymns, songs about dying far from home and taking enemies with you. The music was so loud it damaged our hearing. So loud we could not communicate with each other. So loud we could not think. Zexathera's 4 hands clenched into fists. For 6 hours, Rodriguez and his people turned 47 of our finest warships into floating tombs while that horrible human music played. They did not kill us quickly. They made us listen to their songs while we slowly suffocated. How many survived? From those 47 ships, 12 crew members. Everyone else died listening to humans sing about death and glory. The chamber was completely silent except for the soft sound of the air recycling system. That was when I realized the truth about this war, Zexathera continued. We were not fighting soldiers, we were not fighting warriors. We were fighting artists. Artists? Humans have turned warfare into an art form. Every battle, every tactic, every death is carefully planned, not just for military effect, but for psychological impact. They do not just want to defeat us. They want to break our minds while they do it. She looked around the chamber, meeting each judge's gaze. Sergeant Rodriguez could have simply blown up those ships and killed everyone instantly. Instead, he chose to make us die slowly while listening to human music, because he knew the survivors would never forget the sound. Captain Chen could have attacked us normally and probably lost. Instead, she used our own diplomatic customs to destroy us because she knew we would never trust peace talks again. The silver judge cleared his throat nervously. Commander, your testimony suggests that both sides escalated their tactics significantly. What happened when your forces decided to abandon civilized warfare entirely? Zexathera's compound eyes grew darker. That decision marked the beginning of the most horrifying phase of the war. Our high command decided that if humans would not follow the rules of civilized conflict, then we would show them what uncivilized warfare truly looked like. What did you do? We chose to make an example. Our target was a human colony world called New Phoenix. It had 4 million inhabitants, mostly families and children. Our plan was simple and brutal. The alien commander's voice became mechanical, as if she were reading from a military report. Complete orbital bombardment. Total destruction of all life on the planet. No warnings, no evacuation time, no mercy. We would glass the entire world and broadcast the destruction to every remaining human colony. Gasps of horror echoed through the chamber. The message would be clear, Zexathera continued. Stop your unconventional tactics and surrender, or we will exterminate your entire species one world at a time. The Vortan judge leaned forward. This was genocide. Yes. We knew exactly what we were doing. Our species had never resorted to such measures before, but humans had pushed us beyond our normal limits. Did you proceed with this plan? We did. Fleet Admiral Cortez took 500 ships to New Phoenix. The bombardment began at dawn on the colony's main continent. Within 6 hours, the entire northern hemisphere was burning. Zexathera paused, her breathing becoming shallow. We expected immediate surrender from the remaining human forces. We expected them to beg for mercy, to offer any terms we demanded. Instead, we received a single transmission from Admiral Jake Morrison. What did he say? Nothing. He sent us data. Technical specifications for something we had never seen before. The judges waited in tense silence. Biological warfare, Zexathera whispered. But not against living beings. The humans had created engineered viruses that specifically targeted Kethmori technology. That's impossible, said the Green Judge. Viruses cannot affect mechanical systems. Our ships are not purely mechanical. Like most advanced species, we use organic computing systems, living circuits that grow and adapt. These systems are faster and more efficient than purely artificial computers. Understanding dawned on several faces around the chamber. The human viruses were designed to attack these organic systems. Within hours of receiving Morrison's transmission, every ship in Admiral Cortez's fleet began experiencing system failures. How widespread were these failures? Complete. Navigation, weapons, life support, communications. Everything that depended on our organic computers simply stopped working. 500 of our most advanced warships became floating debris in less than 1 day. Zexathera's 4 hands trembled as she continued. But the viruses did not stop there. They were designed to spread through our communication networks. Every ship that received a transmission from the infected fleet became infected itself. How many ships did you lose? Within 1 week, our entire invasion force was stranded in dead space. Over 2,000 ships completely helpless. The crews were alive, but the ships could not move, could not fight, could not even send messages calling for help. The chamber fell into stunned silence. Admiral Morrison sent us another transmission while our crews were dying slowly in their powerless ships. He explained that the viruses were just a demonstration. If we continued our genocidal tactics, he would show us what human extermination technology really looked like. What did that mean? Zexathera closed her eyes tightly. We found out 3 days later. She paused for a long moment as if gathering courage to continue. One of our core worlds, Keth Prime 7, was home to 2 billion of our people. It was located in the Altair system, far from the war zone. We thought it was completely safe. What happened to it? Colonel Amy Foster happened to it. The way Zexathera spoke the name made it sound like a curse. Colonel Foster contacted our high command directly through channels we did not know she could access. Her message was brief and terrifying. She said that since we had chosen to exterminate one human world, she would demonstrate what human extermination actually looked like. She attacked your homeworld? No. She attacked our sun. Complete silence fell over the tribunal chamber. Using technology we still do not understand, Colonel Foster turned the Altair star into a weapon, not by making it explode or collapse. Something much worse. Zexathera's voice became barely audible. She changed the type of radiation it produced. The star began emitting energy that was specifically lethal to Kethmori biology, but harmless to most other forms of life. How is that possible? We still do not know. Our best scientists spent months trying to understand how humans had learned to modify stellar radiation. The technology should not exist. What was the effect on your people? Slow death. Everyone on Keth Prime 7 began getting sick within days. The radiation poisoning was designed to be gradual, painful, and completely incurable. Our medical technology was useless against it. Zexathara opened her eyes and they seemed to glow with remembered horror. But the worst part was not the death itself. It was the time frame. Colonel Foster had calculated that the radiation would take exactly 50 years to kill every living thing in the Altair system. 50 years. 50 years. Long enough for the people to watch their children grow up and have children of their own before the radiation finally killed them. Long enough for 2 full generations to live their entire lives knowing they were doomed. The Green Judge shook his head in disbelief. Why so long? Why not kill them quickly? Because Colonel Foster wanted to send a message to every Kethamori in the galaxy. She wanted us to understand that if we chose genocide, humans would respond with something far worse than genocide. What could be worse than genocide? Temporal genocide. The complete elimination of our future. Not just killing our people, but ensuring that our species would die slowly, watching helplessly as our entire civilization faded away over decades. Zexathara's voice became stronger, though still filled with horror. Colonel Foster sent detailed calculations showing how the radiation would spread to other systems if the war continued. She proved that humans could sterilize every Kethmori world in the galaxy within 10 years, but the deaths would take centuries to complete. She was threatening your entire species? No. She was promising to destroy our entire species, but slowly enough that we would have time to understand exactly what we had lost and why we had lost it. The alien commander leaned forward, her 4 arms spread on the table. That transmission changed everything. Our high command realized that we were not fighting a primitive species with superior weapons. We were fighting a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of warfare against their own kind. What do you mean? Humans had been fighting each other for millennia before they reached the stars. They had already invented every possible way to kill, to destroy, to terrorize, and to break the spirit of their enemies. When they turned those methods against us, we discovered that we were children playing at war against adults who had mastered it completely. Zexathara sat back in her chair, looking exhausted. After Keth Prime 7, our species faced a choice. We could continue fighting and watch our entire civilization die slowly over the next few centuries. Or we could try to find a way to end the war before humans decided to demonstrate even worse weapons. Did they have worse weapons? Colonel Foster sent us technical specifications for something she called a reality bomb, a weapon that could erase not just our species, but all memory that our species had ever existed. She said they had built 12 of them and were deciding which of our worlds to test them on. You believed her? After what happened to Keth Prime 7, we believed humans were capable of anything. The question was not whether they could build such weapons. The question was whether they would choose to use them. Zexathara looked around the chamber, meeting each judge's gaze in turn. That was when our high command finally understood the true nature of this war. We were not fighting for conquest or territory or resources. We were fighting for our right to continue existing. And the humans? The humans were fighting to teach us a lesson we would never forget, that some species should never be threatened, never be attacked, and never be underestimated. The alien commander's voice dropped to a whisper, and they were very, very good teachers. The Vortan judge's voice was barely steady. Commander, how did this war finally end? Surely your people had to surrender after such demonstrations of human capability? Zexathara shook her head slowly. You would think so. But our high command was too proud to admit defeat. They decided on one final gamble. If we could capture the human homeworld of Earth, we could force them to negotiate from a position of weakness. You attacked Earth directly. We committed everything we had left. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon in our arsenal. The assault on Earth was supposed to be our last chance at victory. The alien commander's compound eyes seemed to focus on something far beyond the chamber walls. General Ryan Phillips was waiting for us. She paused, and when she continued, her voice held a strange mixture of fear and respect. Phillips had positioned the human fleet in a perfect defensive formation around Earth. Our tactical computers analyzed his setup and concluded that he had made several serious mistakes. His ships were spread too thin, his weapon positions were poorly chosen, and he had left several obvious gaps in his defenses. So you attacked through these gaps? We tried to. That was when we learned that General Phillips had not made any mistakes. He had laid a trap so sophisticated that our best military minds never saw it coming. Zexathera used 2 hands to rub her temples, a gesture that had become familiar during her testimony. The gaps in his defenses were not weaknesses. They were channels designed to funnel our entire fleet into specific attack vectors. As soon as our ships entered these channels, Phillips activated a weapon system we had never encountered before. What kind of weapon? Gravity mines. Devices that could create localized gravitational fields strong enough to crush our ships or fling them into each other. Within minutes, our organized assault became complete chaos. How many ships did you lose? In the first hour? Nearly half, our fleet. But that was not the worst part. The judges waited tensely. The worst part was that General Phillips was not trying to destroy us. He was hurting us. Hurting you? Like animals. Every time we tried to regroup or retreat, his gravity mines would activate and push our ships in the direction he wanted us to go. He was controlling the movement of our entire fleet. Zexathara's voice grew quieter. After 6 hours of this, we found ourselves trapped in a sphere of human ships with no way to escape. Our entire invasion force was surrounded and helpless. What did Phillips do then? He opened a communication channel to every ship in our fleet simultaneously. What he said next changed everything. The alien commander closed her eyes, as if she were hearing the words again. General Phillips explained that he could destroy our entire fleet in less than 10 minutes. He had weapons in position that could kill every Kethmori in the system without damaging a single human ship. Did you surrender? Our admiral tried to. But Phillips was not finished talking. He said that before we made any decisions, we needed to understand something important about human warfare. Which was? That everything we had experienced during the war, every horrible weapon, every terrifying tactic, every demonstration of human capability had been carefully designed to minimize casualties. Stunned silence filled the chamber. Phillips showed us classified human military files, technical specifications for weapons they had never used against us, battle plans they had never implemented, strategies they had never deployed. Zexathera opened her eyes, and they seemed to glow with remembered shock. We learned that humans possess the ability to destroy entire star systems in minutes, not years. They could have eliminated our species completely within days of the war beginning, but they chose not to. Why? Because they wanted to give us opportunities to surrender with dignity. Every prolonged battle, every complicated tactic, every psychological weapon was designed to convince us to stop fighting without forcing them to commit total genocide. The green judge leaned forward. Are you saying that humans were showing restraint? I am saying that humans were fighting the most restrained war in galactic history while making it look like the most brutal war ever fought. Zexathera's voice became stronger, more certain. General Phillips explained that every human victory had been calculated to achieve maximum psychological impact with minimum actual casualties. They could have killed billions of our people, but they chose to kill thousands instead. The biological weapons that disabled your fleets? Designed specifically to spare organic life while destroying technology. Humans could have created viruses that killed our people directly, but they chose to strand us instead. The stellar weapon that poisoned Keth Prime 7 could have been set to kill everyone in hours instead of decades. Colonel Foster deliberately chose the slowest possible method to give our people time to evacuate before the radiation became lethal. The revelation seemed to stagger the tribunal members. Phillips showed us the real human battle plans, Zexathera continued. Plans that would have ended the war in our first engagement. Weapons that could have turned our entire fleet into atoms before we even knew we were under attack. Why didn't they use these weapons? Because General Phillips said that humans had learned something from their own history of warfare. That Total victory through overwhelming force creates enemies who will never stop seeking revenge. But victory through demonstrated superiority creates allies who understand the cost of future conflicts. Zexathara stood up from her chair, her forearms hanging at her sides. Phillips gave us a choice. Our forces could fight to the death and be completely destroyed within hours, proving human military superiority but accomplishing nothing else. Or we could surrender with the understanding that humans were offering us something unprecedented in galactic history. What? Partnership, the word seemed to echo in the chamber. Phillips explained that Earth needed allies, not subjects, that humans were interested in trading with other species, not ruling them, that they wanted to join galactic civilization, not conquer it. You believed him? We had no choice but to believe him. He had just demonstrated that humans could have destroyed us at any time but had chosen not to. His offer of partnership was backed by the most convincing argument possible. Which was? The fact that we were still alive to hear it. Zexathara began walking slowly around the chamber, her movements careful and deliberate. Our admiral asked Phillips what terms he wanted for our surrender. His answer was something none of us expected. What did he say? He said there would be no surrender. Instead, there would be a mutual ceasefire followed by peace negotiations between equals. Equals? Phillips acknowledged that while humans had superior weapons, the Kethemori had superior knowledge of galactic politics and trade networks. He proposed an alliance where each species contributed their strengths. The alien commander stopped walking and faced the tribunal directly. That conversation lasted for 18 hours. At the end of it, we had not surrendered to the humans. We had agreed to join them. As allies? As the founding members of a new type of galactic organization, one based on mutual benefit rather than conquest or submission. Zexathara's voice took on a tone of wonder. Phillips showed us that humans had been studying galactic civilization for decades before the war began. They knew about the constant conflicts, the endless cycles of conquest and rebellion, the waste of resources on military buildups. What did they propose instead? A federation of species working together for common goals. Shared technology, coordinated defense, cooperative exploration of unknown regions. Everything that traditional empires claimed to offer but actually delivered. And your people agreed to this? After seeing what human military technology could accomplish, our people were eager to have humans as allies rather than enemies. The war had taught us that fighting humanity was not just futile, it was suicidal. Zexathara returned to her chair, sitting down with visible relief. The peace treaty was signed 6 months later, not a surrender document but a partnership agreement. The Kethemori became the first species to formally ally with humanity. How has this alliance worked? Better than anyone expected. Human military protection combined with Kethemori diplomatic experience has created the most stable political structure the galaxy has ever seen. The alien commander looked around the chamber one final time. But none of that is why I am here today. I came to testify about human war crimes, and I have told you something very different, which is that humans are guilty of the most sophisticated mercy in galactic history. They fought a war designed to minimize casualties while maximizing the psychological impact needed to end future conflicts. Zexathara's voice became firm and clear. Every horrible thing they did to us was carefully calculated to teach us that fighting them was pointless, without actually exterminating us. They could have killed every Kethemori in the galaxy, but instead they chose to terrify us into understanding that cooperation was more profitable than conquest. So you found no evidence of human war crimes? I found evidence of something far more disturbing than war crimes. I found evidence that humans have learned to fight wars so efficiently that their enemies become grateful for the experience. The Auti chamber fell silent as the implications of her words sank in. This tribunal was called to investigate human brutality, Zexathara concluded.